Hello Neverwinter, this is the Wizard Thaumaturge build for Wildspace and Master Imperial Citadel. Buffs are Hot Wings, which you may want to change to Squash Soup, I'll show you why in a minute. Flask of Potency, Seared Tuna, Sunlord's Gift Elixir. This particular build has been optimized for Wildspace. It will unfortunately take a little bit of ramping up. There we go. Notice we're missing about 5% crit strike there. That's where we can switch over to the Squash Soup and get that maxed out if we want to. And we still get a pretty high accuracy value at 26%, 86%. So up to you really. The Squash Soup is easier to come by than the Hot Wings. Gear wise, we're using this one, which can be bought in the store on Moon Vokath. We are using the Scintillate Amulet set, but this is mostly for the set bonus, so you could use the melee version, the Shroomwood set. It's much cheaper. The 6 intelligence does not make a huge difference to your damage. This one comes from the Moon Dancer. I'm using this old one instead of the newer one because, as far as I'm aware, the new ring does not stack with the 2 other damage items that we've got equipped, whereas this one should do. Pulsar coat is also from the Moon Dancer. There are other versions of this. Bone Devil's Ribcage and the Dragon Hunt version. Starweave Sleeve, this is just for a little bit of extra action points. You could legitimately switch to more damage with these if you wanted to. Bit lower item level though, so, and less useful stats. This is the Demon Web's ring, just tons of accuracy on it, really nice ring. Second half of the Scintillate set. There are limited sources of accuracy in this game, this is why this set is so good. Using the Solarium weapons over the new Void touched ones. As you can see, double bonus in Wildspace, plus movement speed. Versus the Void Touch, you get a little bit more movement speed and a nice bit of damage resistance from those ones. But the important bit, the damage, takes a while to ramp up, and once it is ramped up you will start losing it if you're in combat with 4 or more opponents, which is not ideal for this particular dungeon or any of the Wildspace dungeons because there are just loads of mobs everywhere. Pick whichever active artifact your team needs you on. Obviously the mask isn't one of the better ones, Probably want to be running Crystal most of the time, but you might need to switch to Dragonbone Blades or Mythalar. Damage shirt. Not much to say about that. It drops from the dungeon, but it can also be bought in the store on Moonvokath. These pants come from the Dragon Hunts, as I've said in the Arcanist video I did recently. These are the best AP gain pants available because they give the 25 action points and they do it on crit strike. Crit strike is actually more reliable than the combat advantage, just about. Just high item level artifacts here. Obviously the one's difficult to get, but there's plenty of alternatives now. And these are the highest damage boots that currently exist, I think. Obviously only Wildspace particular, but very, very good for that. Stats wise, stacking intelligence and charisma. Intelligence obviously is the damage multiplier stat for magical damage. Charisma just bumps up our forte and recharge speed a bit. Charisma is particularly useful on the wizard because we get the combat advantage forte, so somewhat more useful than other classes. You could potentially switch that to Dex for the crit severity, but Thaumaturges get so many stats, it's not really necessary. Enhancements, obviously just whatever you need to balance your stats here. I would usually always recommend sticking amethysts in your defense because awareness is the best defensive stat we've got, especially against bosses. It is a 1-for-1 damage mitigation against combat advantage damage, and all bosses naturally have combat advantage on you. Rage of Frames, pretty standard. You could probably switch to, I don't know, was it Astral Elfslayer in here? I don't even know if I have any of those. No, it doesn't look like it, but good damage. Good overall damage from that. Devil's Precision. Chances are if you're running this dungeon you will have access to those. You could rework the build slightly to remove the need for this, but obviously you just lose 10% stats. The Lightning Flash at Celestial is frankly just incredible, over 20% stats, and they ramp up very quickly. I've got the movement speed on here. I just feel like movement speed is one of the most useful things you can have, but obviously action point or recharge speed may also be pretty useful. Powers, we've got Ray of Frost on here. It's really good for getting those chill stacks up. And for the first boss, you're probably gonna want to use it to, if you happen to be the wizard who has to freeze the snake. Ray of Frost will really help with that. We've got Scorching Blast on, add Smolder. You got to be very careful with it though, and so you don't get that locked movement bug, which is a massive pain in the ass. It'd be great if they could fix that. Entangling Force, standard. Repel, standard. These two are some of our highest damage dealing encounter powers. due to this. Those two are control power. Most of our powers are actually have some element of control in them. But we get an additional 200 magnitude damage against control immune targets, which means all those bosses which can't be controlled turns that into an 800 magnitude and that into a 780 magnitude. So you know, it's pretty huge. This one is also a control one, so with that shatter strike feat selected, this turns into 800 to 1050 magnitude. Really good stuff. Icy Rays, while we're at it, is one of our most powerful, or I think it is actually our most powerful encounter power, even if it is a bit of a pain to cast sometimes. On the first boss, there's an argument to be made for running icy terrain. If you put that down underneath the snake and or the scorp, then you can freeze it up really quickly just with a quick ray of frost. Alternatively, you'd be running fireball most likely in R1. 700 magnitude every 11 seconds is good stuff. Arcane Singularity, just incredibly useful control, and when you're not using that, you'll probably be using your ice knife. Yeah, the other ones aren't really something we'd use. Okay, I've actually got critical conflagration on here, which makes Scorching Burst redundant. So you'd probably go for Orb of Imposition, potentially, or Chilling Presence, assuming you play in the style that I'm playing. Sword of Destruction, it's very useful for at least one wizard to be running this. If you run with multiple wizards, find out who's running it, because only one wizard needs to run it. Combustive Action is more of an AoE one, but if you happen to be in a place where there's lots of mobs, say first boss, there's an argument for running that to get your AP back a bit quicker. Smouldering Recovery, standard, that's a good way to generate our AP back. Glowing Flames, if we got more than one enemy there, very useful. Shatter Strike, as I've already said, is very good in single target, and also pretty decent in AoE. Now we've got Critical Burn here. There's arguments for both of these. I prefer the Critical Burn because it just makes the rest of the building of the tune so much easier with that extra 10%. And 25% more critical damage on a Smolder is pretty good stuff. Now the choice between these two is it can be quite a tough one to make. So if you're running the Directed Flames, you put the Critical Conflagration on, and then this would be consistently proccing for 25% of the total damage of the Smolder effect. It is mainly useful when you need to do a lot of quick burst damage. It's very useful in MTOS for dealing with cocoons and barrels and such. Over the course of a longer fight though, the Rhymefire Weaving will end up doing more total damage. It's effectively you debuff your own damage, or you debuff their resistance to your damage by 10% when Rhyme Fire is on. So if it's a short fight, directed flames, like you put directed flames on for AoE with the critical burn, with the critical conflagration, with the combustive action. But for longer fights, trials and stuff, Rhyme Fire Weaving. Boons, it's usually a case of pick what you need. I've gone for the Forte here, that's just to bump up the combat advantage slightly. 1% Forte will give you 0.5 power, 0.25 combat advantage, and then whatever the defensive stat the wizard gets is, I think it's critical avoidance. So these four effectively give me an extra 1% combat advantage damage. Action point gain. It's a bit more difficult to get your action points back on the Thaumaturge, so it's worthwhile having this in there. And the recharge speed, of course, because wizard powers take a very long time to recharge versus some other classes. Master boons, Bloodlust is just standard. Once again, I'm not entirely sure if that action point gain is working from Bloodlust. I don't know if anyone's checked it recently, but the rest of the stuff's quite nice anyway. Life Lessons, this procs a lot more than you might think it would at 10%. And just a little bit of extra healing, doesn't do any harm. Opted for Blessed Advantage for the increased recharge speed, and Blessed Resilience, but in the future I might change that to Enhanced Application, like I've got on the Arcanist. Guild boons. Gone for power here because why not? Don't need any of the other stats, and more likely to need the power. Defense, awareness again, best defensive stat that it's possible to put on. Companions. So for the first boss, you're gonna, well, ideally you want something with a little bit of control on it to handle those scorpions. So I've got the Shadowkai Witch on, obviously that is no longer available, but it is absolutely brilliant for control. One thing you will want to avoid using on the first boss is the Minotaur, because it will pull in everything. So it'll pull in the snake, pull in the scorpion if that happens to not be on the boss, and it can just cause an absolute mess. Obviously Regis, I think that one can be bought on the AH, but very expensive. Failing all of that, you've always got your green scale bowmen. Just point out, it's not much point running a Black Death Scorpion on the wizard who is controlling the snake for that first one, because he won't stick on the boss. Cyclops is still a pretty good one, but for the rest of the for the second boss, you'd probably go green scale bowman. It's got a long range, doesn't disengage. You're going to be moving around a lot, so you want something that's going to stay on the target. Last boss, you'd bit of a toss-up between a single target or something with control. It depends how well your tank's handling all the mobs, really. Equipment wise, it's just a case of balancing the stats. I have not bothered to buy the new companion gear because I object to spending that much astral diamonds for a slight increase in item level. Especially that single sat stuff is just ridiculously expensive. We are raising our accuracy with this enhancement. The reason why I try to always build it so that accuracy is the one that we use here is because it can be quite unreliable, and the last thing you want is to lose suddenly 7.5% combat advantage or critical severity as you're about to throw your tunnel. It can happen. So this is obviously a raptor build. Still in a position where it's the most efficient way to build, assuming everybody else has got them on as well. As someone who also tanks, it's a bit of a shame that I have to keep equipping that, but yeah, the extra power is quite useful on a tank as well, to be honest. Got 3 damage companions slotted. The Minx is quite pricey now. They did give a load away in a battle pass a while ago though, so hopefully most people have got them. I think they're available in the Astral lock boxes as well, although obviously quite rare. Neverwinter Night was another one from a battle pass. It keeps popping up occasionally, so I might come back again. The Theory, very strong, very useful. And I've actually managed to not use the golden cap for this one, so hopefully everyone's happy about that. Again, you could switch that up slightly and put the booking and pin there if you want to cap out the accuracy rather than capping out the crit strike. We've gone for 2 tacticians precisions, which means that when we go through our rotation during an artifact call, we do a full rotation, throw our toad, hit our daily, bam, all our encounter powers are back. We get another round of encounter powers within the artifact time, so it's a great way to do a bit of extra damage. Warlord's Motivation. It is probably worth me switching that for another Warlord's Motivation. I don't think we actually need those additional stats from that. But you know, that's tweaks. People can do at their leisure if they want to. We've gone for the Golden Warhorse. That is an event buyable mount from the appointment store. Costs 2 tokens now, I believe. Obviously a lot of people will be running the Toad, which, you know, minion consume is quite useful sometimes, or the Tunnel Vision. Tend to favour the Golden Touch from the Golden Warhorse because it's got one of the smoothest animations, so you don't get locked into the animation like you do the Tunnel Vision or the Toad. Wicked Lich is no good anymore, unfortunately. I had Pack Tactics equipped there just to show what the stats would look like with it equipped. would usually be running Ferocity. It does have a fairly decent uptime, gives you an extra little bit of damage, but there's also an argument for running some like quick action. Or if you need stats, go for some other stats. If you watch my videos, you'll know that I'm a big fan of Providence. I think it's one of the most underrated things ever, but it's not something you'd usually put on a DPS. Okay, I think that's everything for the Wizard Thaumaturge build. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments if you've got any questions.